Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. The air in the hospital was cold and stagnant, and the smell of disinfectant stung the nostrils. The monotonous drip, drip, drip of the monitor sounded like the metronome of death. My daughter, Lark, lay still in that huge hospital bed, surrounded by all kinds of tubes and instruments. The doctor just said, "She'll never wake up." His words were like a cold knife, cutting another hole in my heart that was already full of holes. Mara, my wife, stood beside the bed with that flawless composure on her face that I've seen so often lately. She didn't say anything, just gently put down her handbag and turned around, her footsteps as soft as a falling feather as she disappeared into the doorway. She didn't even look at Lark one last time, at least not in my opinion. I stayed. In this room, this hallway, the whole hospital seemed like a vacuum she left behind. I walked over to the bed and bent down to hold Lark's hand one last time. Her hands were small, fingers curled and cold. Just moments after my hand touched her, a tiny friction caught my attention. A small, minimally folded note slipped from her curled fingertips and fell to the sheets. My heart missed a beat. Shaking, I picked up the note and unfolded it. In Lark's childish but familiar handwriting, my name, and a quivering line with the message, "Daddy, help me." The kitchen timer chimed 3 times, and Clay Merrick quickly clapped it to a halt with a rough palm. He continued to wash dishes that didn't need to be washed in the first place. He whispered, "She's skipping class again, for the 3rd time this month." Mara didn't look up from her laptop, the blue glow reflecting on her sharp features. "It's normal for kids to skip school, Clay. It's not the end of the world." Clay put the plate down with more force than necessary. "She's 13, Mara. 13-year-olds don't just decide to run around on their own. Then talk to her." Mara finally looked up, her eyes hollow. "Aren't you good at that father-daughter stuff?" "That's not the point. Where the hell did she go? With whom? Don't you care?" Mara closed her notebook with a snap. "Of course I care. I'm just not fussing over a few less algebra classes. It's more than that." Clay dried his hands and twisted the towel. "She's getting distant. Something must have gone wrong. Maybe she's just hitting puberty." "No, I know my daughter, even if you don't anymore." The words stung her for a moment. Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. She stood up and skillfully smoothed her shirt. "I have to get back to the office," she said. "It's almost 8. Anderson's case won't finish itself. Don't wait for me." The door closed softly behind her. Clay stood alone in the kitchen, the dripping faucet marking time in the silence. Later that night, Clay knocked on Lark's bedroom door. "Come in," she answered, her voice muffled. He found his daughter sitting cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by books. She hunched over a laptop, her dark hair hanging down. "Hey kid," Clay said as he leaned against the doorframe. "Studying pretty hard." Lark looked up and pushed his glasses back up the bridge of his nose. "Just catching up. You fell behind in your progress when you skipped class." Her pencil stopped. She lowered her head to her notebook. "Mom told you the school called me. They didn't tell me what was going on." Lark shrugged. "It's okay. Lark, look at me." She raised her eyes reluctantly. "I can't help you if you don't tell me what's wrong," he said. "Maybe I don't need help." But there was a tremor in her voice. Clay noticed an old radio on her nightstand with a cracked case and missing knobs. He picked it up and turned it upside down. "Where did you get that?" A flicker of interest flashed across Lark's face. "Corner garage sale. The lady said it was broken, but I hunted. Maybe I could get it fixed." Clay had a small smile on his face. "Tell you what," Clay said, "I'll go get my toolbox and see what we can do with the old thing. When we fix it, maybe you'll be able to tell me where you've been walking to instead of going to algebra class." For the first time that day, Lark had a genuine smile on his face. "Good." For the next 2 hours, they took apart the radio. Clay taught her how to test circuits and clean up connections. As they worked, Lark's words came out hesitantly at first, then like water. "Sometimes I just ride up to the old logging road there," she admitted. "And there's a place where I can see the whole town. It's quiet there." "Next time bring your cell phone," Clay said. "And maybe let me know first instead of having your algebra teacher tell me." Lark laughed, and Clay realized he hadn't heard that voice in weeks. She connected the last wire, and Clay turned the knob. The static niggled, then cleared, and came the smooth sound of a jazz saxophone. "We did it," Lark called out. Clay watched her face light up, taking the moment to heart. Later that night, Clay lay awake listening to Mara's car pull into the driveway at 1:37 a.m. Without a word, she slipped under the covers, smelling of cold air and perfume she hadn't sprayed when she left. At 3:42 p.m. the next day, Clay's phone rang, and he was in the machine shop, hands covered in grease. The caller ID says, Mercy General Hospital. Mr. Merrick, this is Nurse Davidson from the emergency room. I'm calling about your daughter, Lark. The world collapsed into a single point. What happened? She was found unconscious near Pine Ridge Road. A passing driver called the police. She appears to have fallen on her bicycle. Clay's throat tightened. How bad is it? She has a head injury. The doctors are examining her. You should come right over. Clay doesn't remember how he drove on the way to the hospital, only that he ran 3 red lights. He parked his car crookedly and rushed through the gate, still in his overalls. Lark Merrick, my daughter. Where is she? The nurse looked up. Sir, the doctor will be with you shortly. Have a seat. I don't want to sit. I want to see my daughter. A door opened, and a tall man in a white coat stepped out. Mr. Merrick, I'm Dr. Tram. Please come with me. Your daughter suffered a serious head injury, Dr. Tram explained, his voice soft. We've stabilized her, but she's in a coma. We've induced a coma to reduce brain swelling. Coma, Clay repeated numbly. But she'll wake up, right? Dr. Tram's pause was a little longer than normal. We are doing everything we can. The next 48 hours will be critical. They stopped outside the ward. Through the window, Clay saw the monitors surrounding the tiny figure on the bed. Lark looked so thin under the hospital sheets, her face pale, a breathing tube attached from her mouth to the machine. Can I come in? Sure. Clay slowly walked over to the bed. He reached out to take her hand, carefully avoiding the 4-tube. Hey kid, he whispered, Daddy's here. The door opened behind him. Clay turns around, thinking it's Dr. Tram, but sees a nurse he doesn't recognize. I'm Shira, she said softly. I'll be looking after Lark while I'm on duty. Do you need anything? Clay shook his head. Have you notified my wife? Yes, it's been notified. Clay nods and turns back to Lark. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, still holding her hand. What the hell happened? He didn't look up to ask. It is my understanding that she was found at the bottom of a slope on Pine Ridge Road. She broke her bike. She wasn't wearing a helmet. Lumber Road, the quiet place she told him about last night. A couple hours went by. Clay sits on guard and whispers to Lark. Nurses come in and out. The doctor looks at the chart and adjusts the medication. Mara arrived 5 hours after Clay did. He looked up to see her come in, noting her perfectly applied makeup, her sharp blazer. Her face was subdued, her eyes dry. I came as soon as I was done, she said, setting her handbag on a nearby table. She walked over to the bed and looked at Lark. What did the doctor say? Clay explains what little he knows, watching Mara's face for any cracks. No. Poor child, she said, brushing a lock of hair from Lark's forehead with skillful gentleness. What is she doing there all alone? The question hung between them as Clay remembered their conversation in the kitchen and Mara's understatement about Lark skipping school. A sudden chill spread through his chest. I don't know, he lied. The days blurred in the sterile hospital room. Clay only left when he was forced to. Mara comes and goes, always saying she's busy with work, and her appearances are brief and programmed. Dr. Tram's updates are getting less optimistic by the minute. On the 4th day, he explained that the latest EEG showed minimal brain activity, avoiding Clay's eyes. We haven't seen the improvement we were hoping for. What does that mean? Clay asked. Mr. Merrick, at this stage, we need to think about quality of life. The likelihood of meaningful recovery is statistically low. She's 13, Clay said, his voice cracking. She's not a statistic. That night, Mara arrived with takeout, and Clay didn't touch a bite. She put a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that seemed mechanical. Dr. Tram called me today. He said he thought we should consider letting her go. Clay froze. Let her go? She's our daughter, not a pet. I'm being realistic, Mara said, her voice maddeningly calm. The brain damage is severe. Even if she wakes up, when she wakes up, Clay corrected pointedly. The doctors don't think that's going to happen, Mara continues. And even if a miracle happens, she won't be the same. Is that what you want? A life of dependence and misery? Clay turned and really looked at his wife under the harsh hospital lights. It was as if he were seeing her for the first time. That practiced concern that didn't reach her eyes, the impatient tap of her foot, the way she looked at her watch. Well, I want my daughter to have every opportunity. And I want to know why you seem so anxious to give her up. Mara's expression stiffened for a moment, then returned to worried compassion. I'm not giving up. I'm facing reality. One of us has to face it. She left soon after, saying she had an early meeting. Clay returned to his place beside Lark's bed and took her small hand in his. I'm not going anywhere, kid, he promised. Stay as long as you need. He felt something crumple in his hand as he moved hers. He frowned and gently turned over her hand. There, folded tightly and tucked into her curled fingers, was a small piece of paper. Clay carefully pulled it out and unfolded the torn piece of notebook paper with a trembling hand. In Lark's unmistakable handwriting, for words were written, "Daddy, save me." Clay stared at the note, reading it over and over. A cold certainty spread through his stomach. Lark didn't simply fall down. She hid the note, knowing she was in danger. He looked at his daughter's still face. "I will," he whispered, folding the note and putting it in his pocket. "I promise." The next morning, Clay stops Dr. Tram outside Lark's hospital room. The doctor was so startled by Clay's proximity that he almost dropped his chart binder on the floor. "Mr. Merrick," he said as he adjusted his glasses, "I was just looking at Lark's latest readings." "And then what?" Clay asked, blocking the doctor's path. "I'm afraid there has been no significant change. Have you and your wife discussed the options?" "That's what I wanted to talk to you about." Clay approached, his voice low. "You seem very insistent on convincing us there is no hope. What's this about?" Dr. Tram visibly swallowed. "I'm just following medical protocols for hopeless cases." "She's not a hopeless case." Clay's words were short. "She's a 13-year-old girl who deserves every opportunity." "Sure, but the reality of her situation is The reality is," Clay interrupted, "that someone wants my daughter dead. I am curious as to why you are so eager to help them." The doctor was pale. "This is a serious allegation. Maybe the stress is clouding your judgment." "My judgment is good," Clay said, "but yours seems to be out of whack. Who else has spoken to you besides my wife, doctor?" Dr. Tram's expression changed, fear replacing professional supremacy. "I don't know what you're implying, but I assure you that I'm only concerned about your daughter's health." "Then prove it," Clay said. "Do more tests, try different treatments, and do your job." "There are a lot of considerations, hospital resources, ethics committees I don't care about resources or committees," Clay said, his voice dangerously quiet. "All I care about is my daughter. If anything happens to her because you cut corners or succumb to pressure, I will hold you personally responsible." Dr. Tram nodded nervously. "Oh, I'll see what else we can do." That night, Clay returned to his empty home to shower and change. In the bedroom, he found Mara's perfume on the dresser, not the one she usually used, but a newer, more expensive brand. She had clothes hanging in her closet that he'd never seen before. Clay's phone rang, Mara's name flashing on the screen. "Where are you?" She picked up and asked. "I went to the hospital, but you weren't there." "Home," he said. "Need a shower and a change of clothes." "Good. You should take a break. I'm staying at the hospital with Lark tonight." A week ago, he would have appreciated the offer. Now that sent chills down his spine. "No," he said casually. "I'll go back now." "Clay, you're exhausted. Let me take a shift." I said no. The words were more pointed than he'd intended. There was a moment of silence between them. Mara's voice was carefully neutral when she spoke again. "Okay, I have some work to catch up on anyway." Clay returns to the hospital and finds Shira checking Lark's vitals. She smiled when she saw him. "What a coincidence," she said. "I was just about to give change." Clay watched her work. Her movements were gentle and efficient, not unlike Dr. Tram. She spoke to Lark as if the girl could hear every word. "You're good for her," Clay observed. Shira laughed. "It's part of the job, but she's a special kid." "How do you know?" "Quiet kids are always like that." She finished her work and turned to face him. "And she has you fighting for her. Not every patient is so lucky." Something in her tone made Clay look at her more closely. "What do you mean by that?" Shira glanced in the direction of the door before answering. "It's just that some doctors give up too quickly, especially when family members, self-righteous family members, put the pressure on." "Has my wife been pressuring Dr. Tram?" Shira was busy looking at Lark's chart. "I didn't say that." "You don't have to say." Clay stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Please, if you know anything I'm just a nurse, Mr. Merrick. I'll do my job and go home. And part of your job is to protect your patients, right?" Shira locked eyes with him, her face a mix of hesitation and determination. Eventually, She nodded almost imperceptibly. I'll keep a close eye on Lark while I'm on duty, she promised quietly, day and night. Thanks, Clay said, understanding the unspoken warning. After Shira left, Clay pulled a chair close to Lark's bedside and took her hand. I got your note, boy, he whispered, and I'm beginning to understand. Don't worry, I won't let anyone hurt you again. Clay sat in Jonas Pike's cluttered living room with an untouched beer on the coffee table. Jonas paced back and forth, his lanky frame making the small space seem even more cramped. Are you saying Mara tried to kill Lark? Jonas scratched his thinning hair with his hand. Jesus, Clay. I'm saying things aren't right, Clay replied. The note, the doctor's behavior, Mara pushing to unplug the life support. But this is Mara, your wife, Lark's mom. You think I don't know? Clay's voice took on a tired edge. You think I want to believe that? Jonas stopped pacing and sat heavily across from his friend. They've known each other since they were kids. Jonas was the best man at Clay's wedding and Lark's godfather. Okay, Jonas finally said. What do I need from me? A sense of relief swept over Clay. The police have all of Lark's belongings from the time of her accident, her backpack, her cell phone. I need to see them. Jonas nodded slowly. Matt Donner is still working in the evidence section. I towed his car for him last month when his transmission went out. He owes me a favor. Can you call him today? I'll do better than that, Jonas said as he stood up. Grab a coat. We're going now. 2 hours later, they were in Jonas' trailer, parked outside the police station. Lark's cell phone and backpack sit between them. The backpack was typical teenage kid stuff. Cell phones are more fun. Her password is your birthday, Jonas explained, handing Clay his cell phone. Clay looked through recent texts and social media and didn't find anything unusual. Then he opened the location history. Look here, he said, pointing to a marked spot in the woods on Pine Ridge Road. That's where she went when she skipped school. The accident was near it. There's more. Clay opens the voice memos app. She's recording. The most recent recording was the day of the accident. I don't know who else to tell, she whispered, her voice tinged with fear. I saw Mom with him again yesterday. They didn't see me. They were arguing about money and about Dad. Mom says he is becoming a problem. The man said they needed to be patient and that everything was arranged. I don't understand what's happening, but I'm scared. I'm going to follow my mom after school today. I think she's going to meet him at that place again. The recording breaks off in a rustle. Then Lark's voice, with panic, was higher. No, Mom, don't dash, followed by a crash, then silence. Clay and Jonas froze, the implications of what they had heard looming over them like a shroud. Clay, Jonas finally spoke, his voice perversely soft. What are you going to do? Clay slipped his cell phone into his pocket, his face turning cold and determined. Find out who that man is, find out what they're planning, and make sure they all pay for what they did to my daughter. Don walked through the pine forest as Clay parked his truck at the trailhead. He checked the GPS coordinates in Lark's cell phone one last time, then started hiking. 20 minutes later, he reached a small clearing overlooking the town below. Lark's quiet place. Clay stood there for a moment, as if watching it all through his daughter's eyes. He continued on, winding down a narrow path that led to the highway. Then the trail ends abruptly at the edge of a steep cliff. Below is a rugged slope that runs down to the highway where Lark was found. Clay carefully made his way down the slope, noting the broken branches, and churned up dirt left where Lark and her bike had fallen. Near the base of a large pine tree, Clay finds something the police missed. Clear tire tracks were pressed into the soft dirt, partially hidden by large needles. He took pictures with his cell phone and then used a branch to clear away more debris, revealing the full indentation. The tread was unusual, one of those expensive all-weather tires that Mara insisted on putting on her limo. At the top of the cliff, where the trail ended, he found more evidence. Scratches in the dirt, signs of a struggle, and the deadliest of all, a broken acrylic fingernail, lacquered in that particular shade of lavender Mara had painted the day before Lark's accident. He carefully bagged the nails, his hands steady despite the rage inside. The picture is getting clearer. Lark followed Mara here. There was a conflict. Then, Clay closed his eyes, trying to dispel the image of his daughter falling, bruised and bleeding, while Mara watched from above. His phone rang, startling him. Jonas' name flashed on the screen. I'm at the hospital, Jonas said when Clay got through. Where are you? The woods, Clay replied. Found some evidence. Come back soon. That nurse friend of yours has been looking for you. She said it was important. Clay's heart is racing. Lark? She's stable, Jonas quickly assured. But you need to hear what the nurse has to say. Clay found Shira in the hospital cafeteria, her scrubs wrinkled and obviously on a long shift. She looked up to see him approaching, relief on her tired face. I wasn't sure you'd come, she whispered. Clay sat down across from her. Jonas said it was important. Shira looked around the nearly empty cafeteria, then leaned forward. I saw something last night. I wasn't sure at first, but after we talked. What did you see? Clay clenched his hands on the table. Your wife came in around midnight. She thought no one had seen it. Dr. Tram sent the night nurse on a break. I was doing rounds on another patient, but saw her through the window. Clay's grip tightened. What did she do? She was holding something in her hand, tiny, like a vial or syringe. She's checking Lark's foreline. Shira swallowed hard. I went in and she jumped in shock, like she'd seen a ghost. She said she was just helping Lark adjust the blanket. But you don't trust her. After she left, I checked Lark's medical records. Her condition deteriorated overnight, despite being stable for a whole week before. Blood tests show elevated potassium levels. Shira looked directly at him. It can happen naturally, but it can also be deliberately induced. If the level is high enough, it can lead to cardiac arrest. The world shrinks to a point. Anger and fear warred in Clay's chest. You mean, she tried to kill her daughter again? I mean, something's not right. Shira reaches across the table, her hand stopping a little above him. I reported the incident, but Dr. Tram ignored it. Said I was too tired to look away. Why are you telling me this? Why are you risking losing your job? Shira's eyes softened. Because Lark deserves someone to fight for her. And, she hesitated. Because I remember you, Clay Merrick. You in high school. Nobody helped me then. You helped me. I never forgot. Clay looked closely at her face as memories slowly surfaced. Shira Langley, chemistry class. She nodded, a light smile on her lips. Senior, those boys always bullied me. You set them straight. You don't even know me, but you stepped up anyway. The memory fragments are back. A quiet girl being harassed by rugby players. Clay intervened, and a confrontation got him a black eye and detention. I didn't think you'd remember, Shira said. I remember, Clay replied. A bridge of trust is built between them. What do we do now? I'll keep an eye on Lark to make sure she's never alone with your wife or Dr. Tram. But Clay, you need proof. Real evidence, not speculation. I'm working on it. Clay hesitates, then decides to trust her even further. I found tire tracks at the scene of the accident, left by my wife's car. I also got a recording from Lark's cell phone, where she recorded something about Mara meeting with a man and planning something. A man? Who? That's what I need to find out. That night, Clay waited until Mara left for another party before entering her home office. The computer requires a password. He tried a few obvious ones. None of them were right. He called Jonas, who arrived 19 minutes later with a small device that looked like a flash drive. It's a password cracker, he explains, given to me by a friend in IT security. They waited and watched as the device cycled through attempted code combinations. After 7 minutes of tense waiting, the screen unlocked. What now? Jonas asked. Look for anything to do with Lark, with me, with the other guy. Clay began, navigating through the files. Nothing was out of the ordinary until Clay opened her mail and found a folder labeled Only R. There are hundreds of emails in there addressed to Ordrigues@securitechsolutions.com. Clay opened the most recent letter. We need to push forward. She was starting to get suspicious. The incident with L complicated things, but there's still time to salvage the plan. See you tomorrow. The old place. The reply was short. Anyway, I didn't sign this contract halfway through. Clay's hand tightened on the mouse. Riggs. Jonas came over to look at the screen. Who the hell is this? Clay searched for the name and found the LinkedIn profile of Rafe Driggs as a systems administrator at Mercy General Hospital, the same hospital where Lark lay. Good for you, Clay whispered. He works at the hospital. Further digging revealed more emails, this time with attachments, financial documents, bank statements, life insurance policies. Clay, Jonas pointed to a document. Is this what I think it is? Clay opens the file. It was a life insurance policy on himself, bought 6 months ago, without his knowledge. Mara was the sole beneficiary. The amount of compensation is $2 million. They were going to kill me, Clay said, his voice hollow. But things changed. They turn on Lark. What? Clay opens more files for quick browsing. Here. The other policy, Lark's, was purchased 3 months ago. $500,000. There are also property documents for Mexico Beach house. Bought under Mara's name. The bank account, I've never seen it. They plan to run, Jonas said, when Lark waits for them to get their insurance money. Clay continued his search and found some encrypted messages that required a separate password. Jonas tried his device again, but this time it wouldn't crack. We need better hackers, Jonas admits. There's no time, Clay said, copying the encrypted file anyway. We have enough in hand. They had just finished packing when the headlights swept across the driveway. Mara came back early. Go around the back, Clay ordered, shutting down the computer, and take everything we find. Jonas slips out the back door with the evidence while Clay walks into the living room, a book he's not reading in hand, and takes a seat in the armchair. A few moments later, Mara came in and stopped in her tracks when she saw him. You slept in pretty late, she said as she set down her handbag. Couldn't sleep, Clay replied, looking at her, book shielding his face. How was the meeting? It went well. She took off her jacket to reveal a dress he had never seen before. Has Lark changed anything? Nope. Dr. Tram would like to meet tomorrow to discuss options. Mara nodded. Satisfaction flickered across his face for a moment, and quickly returned to its usual concern. We should consider what he has to say. I already know what I'm going to say, Clay replied, looking directly at her. Disagree. Mara's smile froze. Clay, get real. We can't keep her on machines forever. Why not? He asked, his voice deceptively calm. What's the rush, Mara? There's a plan. She stiffened almost imperceptibly. What does that mean? Nothing, Clay said, flipping back to the page. Just curious as to why my wife was in such a hurry for her daughter to die. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty, and Clay was sitting with Jonas and Shira, heads close together, with a couple cups of awful coffee in front of him. It's not enough, Shira said after listening to the clues they found. Suspicious mail, life insurance policies. All of this is just circumstantial. The prosecutor won't take it up. What about the recording on Lark's cell phone? Jonas asked. It broke before the defining moment, Clay said, and we needed more. We need to catch them red-handed. How do I catch it? Shira asked. Clay stared at his coffee as a plan took shape in his head. Give them what they want. The next day, Clay met with Dr. Tram and Mara in Dr. Tram's office. He looked haggard, his shoulders slumped and beaten. I've been thinking about what you two said, he began, his voice raspy with exhaustion. About quality of life, about what Lark would want. Mara reached out to take his hand, a calculated gesture of support. I know how hard it is. Clay let her hold it, forcing himself not to jerk his hand away. I'd like to see the paperwork, that waiver of consent to resuscitation. I need to understand exactly what we are agreeing to. Dr. Tram nodded, relief evident on his face. Sure, I'll have all the paperwork ready. Mr. Merrick, it was the right decision. Compassionate decision. When? Mara asked, fingers tightening on Clay's hand. Tomorrow, Dr. Tram replied. We need both of you to sign. Then we will gradually reduce support. The process will be peaceful, I promise. Clay dropped his eyes and nodded. I'd like to spend some time alone with her tonight to say goodbye. Sure, Mara agreed quickly. I'll come over after work. After they leave the office, Clay finds Shira waiting outside Lark's hospital room. Did they believe it? She asked quietly. Convinced. Action tonight. Later in the evening, after the day shift nurses had all left, Clay carefully installed a couple of small cameras that Jonas had gotten. One was above Lark's bed, disguised as a smoke detector. One was near the medicine shelf, and the third was facing the door. Each camera is connected directly to Clay's cell phone. Shira comes in, holding a small package. Inside is a microphone hidden inside a rehab bear doll. Clay put it on Lark's nightstand. His phone vibrated with a message from Jonas, who was waiting in a van in the parking lot. Audio clarity. The video signal is connected. Ready. Shira checked Lark's vitals. I adjusted her medication schedule so no one would need to come in until morning. Dr. Tram thinks I'm home. Thanks, Clay said, genuinely appreciating what she'd done. Don't thank me now. We don't know if this works yet. It will, Clay said with certainty in his voice. Mara can't resist. Last visit. One last time to make sure Lark never wakes up and tells what she knows. 11:42 p.m. Clay's cell phone vibrated with a message from Jonas. Someone's coming. Clay quickly ducked into the small closet in the corner of the room, leaving the door open just enough to see out. A few moments later, the door to the room opened and Mara entered. She walked in with a quiet confidence, checking the hallway before entering and closing the door behind her. She carries a small box in her hand and sets it on the mobile table next to Lark's bed. Clay watched as Mara opened the case to reveal a syringe. She examined Lark's foreline, then pulled the syringe out of the sterile package. "I'm sorry it's come to this," she said, her voice soft, but no real emotion could be heard. "It was supposed to be painless. You weren't going to wake up." She stroked Lark's hair, a skillful and empty gesture. "But you preferred to follow me that day. Prefer to be that perfect little detective." She prepared the syringe and popped it, expelling the air bubbles. "Of course your father will be in pain, but he'll heal with time. And with the $2 million, Rafe and I could start over somewhere warm. A place far from the memories of this sad town and this unfortunate incident." She aligned the needle with the infusion port. "Bye, Lark." Clay sprinted out of the closet and crossed the distance in 2 steps. He grabbed Mara's wrist and twisted it until the syringe fell to the floor with a clunk. "Clay!" Mara gasped, shock and fear replacing the icy calculation on her face. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice deadly calm. "Protect my daughter. From her own mother." Mara's expression shifted quickly, fear turning to indignation. "It's not what you think. I was just checking her meds dash. With a syringe you brought from home?" Clay's grip tightened. "Stop lying to me." "Not at all anymore." The door slams open and Jonas and Shira rush in, followed by 2 security guards and a cop Clay recognizes as Matt Donner. "We recorded it all," Jonas said, holding up his cell phone, "and the video and audio are clear as day." Mara's face instantly lost its blood as she realized she was trapped. For a brief moment, her disguise slipped completely away, revealing a cold calculation. "You have no idea what you're doing," she hissed at Clay. "This isn't over dash, actually," Officer Donner said. He stepped forward, handcuffs in hand. "I think it's over. Mara Merrick, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Lark Merrick." Clay watched as they took Mara away, her composure crumbling further with each step, curses and denial pouring from her lips. After they leave, he returns to Lark and holds her hand again. "It's all right, boy," he whispered. "She can't hurt you anymore." The next morning, Clay and Detective Laura Vance sat in a small conference room at the police station. "The evidence is before them. We need to question this Rafe Driggs," Detective Vance said as he took notes. "He's been suspended after we notified the hospital of the situation, but no arrests have been made. He's still at large." "He was involved," Clay insisted. "He helped her plan everything." "I believe you, but we need evidence to directly link him to the attempted murder of your daughter. The video only shows your wife acting alone." "Check the records of his visits to the hospital," Clay suggested. "Lark deteriorated several times while she was hospitalized. I'll bet he's accessed her records and maybe altered her medications." Vance nodded. "Good idea. We'll look into it. In the meantime, we need to keep your daughter safe. Mara's in custody, but Driggs is still out there. I won't leave her halfway," Clay promised. Clay returns to the hospital to find Shira waiting outside Lark's hospital room. She was pale and full of worry. "After you left, someone tried to get into Lark's room," she said. "A man, claiming to be a hospital administrator. When I asked to see his ID, he quickly left." "Driggs," Clay grunted. "Did you get a good look at him?" "Tall, thin, dark hair, glasses. Very neat and tidy and seemingly appearance conscious." Clay's cell phone rang. "Jonas. I just got home," Jonas said without any preamble. "And my house was turned upside down. Someone went through everything." Icy fear gripped Clay's heart. "Are you okay?" "It's okay. I wasn't home when it happened. But Clay, my laptop with copies of the evidence is missing." "The police have the originals," Clay assured him. "But you be careful. It's Driggs. He wants to clean up the mess Mara left behind." After hanging up, Clay made a decision. Lark isn't safe here, especially when Driggs still has access to the hospital system. "What are you thinking?" Shira asked. "I need to move her where Driggs can't find her. Will you help me?" Hours later, with Detective Vance's reluctant consent and Dr. Tram's forced cooperation, Clay watched as Lark was lifted into a private ambulance. The paperwork said the destination was Portland General Hospital, but the ambulance would actually take her to Pinewood Rehabilitation Center, a small private rehabilitation facility on the outskirts of town. Clay returns home to pack his bags and finds his house ransacked. Drawers were emptied, furniture overturned, and electronic equipment smashed. On the wall in the living room, spray painted in red, is a message: "It's not over." Clay walked to the garage and pulled out the tin box hidden behind an old paint can. Inside was an old service pistol left over from his brief career as a military policeman. He checked his weapon, loaded it, and tucked it into the waist of his pants. Then he called Detective Vance. "Someone broke into my house," he told her, "and left threats on the walls. Are you okay? Do we need to send a patrolman?" "No," Clay replied, his voice steady. "But you should probably put out a bolo on Rafe Driggs and warn your officers. He may be armed and desperate." "Clay," Vance's voice became shrill, "don't do anything stupid. Let us handle it." "Sure," Clay lied. "I'm just going to a friend's house for a couple days until the wind blows over." After hanging up, Clay called Jonas. "Driggs came by my house and left a message." "Jesus, Clay, you need to lay low. That's the plan. I'm on my way to Pinewood now. But before that, I need you to do something for me." "Go ahead. Find out where Driggs lives and if he's home right now." The courthouse looms as a monolith of justice, something Clay no longer trusts. He sat stiffly in the hard wooden chair and watched his wife's lawyer whisper in her ear. Mara looked skinny in her orange prison uniform, and her hair was harshly combed back. Judge Howard Driggs, whom Clay realizes is Rafe's brother, is looking down from the bench with barely concealed annoyance. The brothers looked strikingly alike. The same thin face, the same icy eyes hidden behind expensive glasses. "Mr. Merrick," Judge Driggs spoke directly to Clay, "you have made very serious allegations against your wife. To be honest, these allegations are not fully supported by the evidence so far." Clay's court-appointed attorney moved uneasily next to him. "Your Honor, we submitted video evidence that clearly shows what it shows," interrupted Judge Driggs, "is a grieving mother who is checking on her critically injured daughter. The defense presented expert testimony that the substance in the syringe was a standard supplement, not a lethal compound." "That's because the actual syringe is missing from the evidence," Clay said, unable to suppress the bitterness in his voice. Judge Driggs fixed him with an icy stare. "Mr. Merrick, you only speak when you are named. Now, with regard to the recording on your daughter's cell phone, the defense contends that it has been edited and that our technical experts were unable to verify its authenticity without the original device, which also happens to be missing." Clay clenched his fists on the table. Lark's cell phone was in police evidence until it disappeared. Like the syringe, like the soil sample from the accident site, it's all gone. It's all been explained away with bureaucratic excuses. In light of these evidentiary issues, Judge Driggs continued, "and given Mrs. Merrick's her standing in the community, I am inclined to grant bail pending further investigation." "Your Honor," Clay's attorney protested, "Mrs. Merrick is accused of trying to murder her own daughter twice. And there is evidence that she and her alleged accomplice may have planned to harm Mr. Merrick as well." "Alleged" is the key. Counsel Lord Justice Driggs shuffled papers from the bench, with bail set at $200,000. "Mrs. Merrick will turn in her passport and remain within the county." Next case. Mara looks at Clay for the first time as she's taken away. Her disguise slipped for only a moment, and he saw what had been hidden in the past: cold victory. The kind that knows the system will bend over backwards for them. Walking out of the courthouse, Clay stood in the rain, letting it soak his suit jacket. Detective Vance approaches, looking as frustrated as he is. "I'm sorry," she said. "I knew Howard Driggs was a problem, but I didn't think he would be so blatant." "She'll be out by dinner," Clay said coldly, "and Lark still isn't safe." "We're still looking for Rafe Driggs," Vance assured him, "and I sent an officer to Pinewood as well." "Not enough." Clay stares at the courthouse steps as Mara's attorney is making a statement to the press, painting Clay as a paranoid, delusional husband who can't come to terms with his daughter's tragic accident. "They'll cover it all up." "Not if I can stop it," Vance promised. "Case open, Clay. We'll find more evidence." But Clay was done listening. He has reached rock bottom, that place where he has lost faith in the system and in justice. Now, there was only one way to go, a way he would walk alone. Clay parked his truck outside the Rafe Driggs upscale apartment building and watched the lights come on in the windows. 3 days have passed since Mara was released on bail. 3 days of careful planning. His makeshift cell phone vibrated with a text from Jonas. Just got to RD. Black SUV, dark tinted windows, 2 people inside. Clay watched as the vehicle Jonas described drove into the underground parking lot. A few minutes later, he saw Mara and Rafe emerge from the elevator and walk into the marble-floored lobby, heads close together, talking eagerly. Even from a distance, Clay could read the tension in their bodies. Mara's gestures are sharp when she speaks. Rafe kept looking around, carrying the alertness of his prey as he sensed a predator approaching. They argued briefly, then disappeared into the hallway leading to Rafe's apartment. Clay looked at his watch. It's about time. He dialed a number on his temporary cell phone. After 2 rings, a nurse in Pinewood answered the phone. "I'm Dr. Westfield," Clay said in an aggravated voice. "I need to see Nurse Langley about Lark Merrick." A few moments later, Shira answered the phone. "I'm Nurse Langley." "It's time," Clay said simply. "Is everything ready?" "Yes," Shira replied, maintaining her professional accent. The patient's examination this morning showed significant improvement. Brainwave activity is approaching a normal pattern. "Great," Clay said while looking at Rafe's apartment building. "Please be ready for the program we discussed. I'll be there in an hour." After hanging up, Clay made another call, this time to the hospital where Lark was initially hospitalized. "Records Department." A voice with a hard tone replied. "I'm Rafe Driggs, the system administrator," Clay said, keeping his voice short and authoritative, mimicking the tone of voice in the Rafe video clips he'd studied. "I'm working remotely today, and I need access to patient files for an audit. My security token doesn't work. I can reset it for you, Mr. Driggs. Just verify your employee ID." Clay recited the number he'd memorized from the Rafe personnel file, which Jonas had gotten from an HR friend. "All set, Mr. Driggs. You should be able to access the system now. Anything else?" "No, that's all." Clay hung up the phone, a cold smile curling the corners of his mouth. Then he took out his second makeshift cell phone and wrote a text message to Mara's personal cell phone. "Urgent. Pinewood Hospital L showed signs of consciousness and was in urgent need of immediate transfer back to Mercy General. Authorization is required." He added Dr. Tram's name to his signature and sent it. Through the hall window, he saw Mara's reaction, her posture suddenly becoming tense as she pushed her cell phone toward Rafe, and their panicked conversation ensued. Within minutes, they were rushing back to the parking lot in a hurry. Clay started the truck and kept his distance, following their SUV through town. However, instead of driving to Pinewood, the SUV turned toward Mercy General Hospital. Clay grimaced. They took the bait, thinking Lark would be turned back to where they had influence. As they rush to intercept a patient who won't even show up, Clay calmly drives to Pinewood. Shira waits there, holding the medical records they falsified to show that Lark's condition has improved significantly. "Is she safe?" Clay asks, and Shira leads him towards a room that Lark hasn't stayed in before. "Room 212, registered as Sarah Jenkins," Shira confirmed, "our most secure ward. Visitors require prior authorization and authentication." In her new room, Lark lies as still as ever, but the machines monitoring her show stronger vital signs. "Is she really getting better?" Clay asked, hope slipping into his voice despite all this. Shira nodded with genuine optimism in her eyes. "Her latest examination is encouraging. Brain activity is increasing and she's responding to stimuli. It's possible she can hear us, even if she can't respond yet." Clay held his daughter's hand. "Hang in there, kid. We'll end this tonight." Back in the truck, Clay checked his third makeshift cell phone, the one he used to text Jonas. A new message is waiting. They panicked. The RD is trying to access the hospital system from his laptop and keeps calling. "Great," Clay cooed. His plan is simple but effective. The falsified records he uploaded into the hospital system using Rafe's credentials showed Lark waking up, responding, and, most damningly, providing a detailed testimony about the day of her accident, one that implicated Mara and Rafe in an attempted murder. Now Rafe must be frantically trying to delete those records and erase the digital trail. He needs to access the hospital's main server room to make sure nothing remains. Clay sent Jonas another text. Phase 2. The server room at Mercy General Hospital hums with the sound of cooling fans and processors running. Clay and Jonas waited in the darkness of a nearby storage room, the door left open just enough to see the entrance to the server room. What if he doesn't come? Jonas asked quietly. He'll come, Clay replied with certainty. He has no choice. 11:42 p.m. The elevator at the end of the hallway rattled softly. Footsteps approaching, swift and purposeful. Rafe Driggs shows up, nervously looking over his shoulder and swiping his card at the server room door. Clay nodded to Jonas, who stepped silently to the server room door and held a small device against the card reader, another tool to keep the door from locking itself when it closed. They waited 3 minutes to give Rafe time to log into the system. Then Clay opened the door to the storage room and they stepped inside. The server room was shrouded in the blue glow of the monitors. Rafe sat at a workstation, his back to the door, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he tried to purge the falsified records from the system. He was so focused on his task that he didn't hear the door open and didn't notice Clay and Jonas until they were already behind him. Looking for what? Clay asked. Rafe spun around so violently, he almost fell out of his chair. His practiced, good-looking face instantly lost its color at the sight of Clay. This is a restricted area, he stammered, trying to regain his composure. You can't come in. Funny, Clay said, his voice dangerously calm. I was about to say the same thing to you. Rafe's eyes looked to the door, calculating the chances of escape. Jonas stood sideways, blocking the exit. Don't think about it, Jonas discouraged simply. What do you want? Rafe asked, voice higher than usual. If this is about Mara, I don't know anything. She's just a friend. A friend you were going to run away with her, Clay said. A friend you helped attempt to kill my daughter. It's ridiculous. I never touched your daughter. I've never even seen her. But you know her, Clay said. You know Mara wants her gone, just like you know about the plan to get rid of me. Clay took a step closer, forcing Rafe to push his chair back until it hit the table. $2 million is no small amount. Enough to start over in Mexico. That's a nice beach house you put a deposit on, by the way. Rafe's composure breaks down further. You prove nothing. No need to prove it, Jonas said, holding up his cell phone. We're recording. All of it, including your current attempt to expunge the hospital records. Clay asked, a question that had been tormenting him since the beginning, is 13 years old. What did she do to deserve this? Rafe's expression shifted a little, a kind of calculation, as if weighing what to say and how much Clay might already know. She saw us, he finally admitted, that day in the woods. She followed Mara and heard us talking about insurance plans. We didn't know she was there until it was too late. So Mara pushed her. Clay said that despite his early suspicions, the confirmation hit him like a physical blow. Her own daughter? It was an accident, Rafe insisted, though his eyes betrayed the lie. She was just trying to stop her from running away, from telling you. The girl fell. Nobody wants that to happen. Clay's hands clenched at the sides of his body. And then what? The tampering with her medication afterward, the attempts to unplug the life support system. Were those accidents too? Rafe swallowed hard. Mara said that was more humane, that the girl would never wake up anyway, would never have a normal life. Why make her suffer? Because she's my daughter, Clay said, his voice slightly choked. And she deserves every chance to live. Rafe's eyes went to the computer screen, his deletion program still running. Clay followed his gaze. Stop it, he ordered, now. It's too late, said Rafe, in a tone with a hint of his usual smugness. The file is already in the process of being cleared. In 5 minutes, nothing will be left of the evidence, just like in a court of law. Jonas steps forward and gently pushes Clay aside. Luckily, I brought this. He held up a small device attached to a portable hard disk. I recorded everything from the moment you logged on. Every keystroke, every file you touched. Rafe's face lost its blood color. You can't I've already done that, Jonas interrupted, connecting the device to the workstation. Now, let's talk about it. You're going to tell us exactly what happened. How you and Mara met. How you planned to kill me to cheat the insurance money. And how you helped cover up what she did to Lark. Why am I doing this? Rafe asked, desperation sharpening his voice. Clay leaned down so his face was level with Rafe. Because right now, Detective Vance is executing a search warrant for your apartment. There, she'll find the evidence you went to such pains to steal from the police station. And if you don't cooperate, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. That includes those in state prisons who keep child murderers in regular cells. Fear flickered in Rafe's eyes. I want a lawyer. Of course, Clay agreed easily. After you give us your testimony. Your full testimony. For a moment, Rafe seemed to be trying to resist. Then his shoulders slumped and the fight was gone. What do you want to know? He asked, his tone frustrated. Everything. Clay replied. Start talking. The Grand Hotel hosts a charity gala that is an annual event for the Oak Ridge social scene. Mara Merrick arrived fashionably late to the party, drawing countless stares in a black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salaries. Her court appearances have rather added to her mystique. The wronged wife, the devoted mother wrongly accused by her unstable husband. She played it flawlessly, and Oak Ridge's social circle welcomed her back with open arms. She moved through the crowd with skillful grace, accepting touches of sympathy and support with just the right amount of dignity. No one mentioned the orange prison uniform she wore a few days ago. No one dares to ask about the daughter who is still unconscious, or the husband who is conspicuously absent. At exactly 9:30 p.m., the band took a break and the event chair approached the microphone to announce matters. The double doors of the hotel opened. Detective Laura Vance enters, two uniformed officers standing behind her. Behind them was Clay, grim-faced. The chatter stopped and they moved purposefully through the crowd. Mara was taking a glass of champagne from the waiter and didn't notice until there was a sudden silence around her. She turned, her usual smile frozen on her face, to see Clay approaching. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice extraordinarily clear in the sudden silence. You violated the restraining order. Actually, he didn't, Detective Vance said as he stepped forward. That restraining order was lifted this afternoon. She pulled a document out of her jacket. But I have something else, Mara Merrick, and you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Lark Merrick, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and the attempted murder of Clay Merrick. Mara's champagne glass slipped from between her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. This is ridiculous. You have tried. The judge has recused himself, interrupted Vance, after evidence of his interference was found to have been presented to the State Judicial Council. The two huge screens on both sides of the ballroom that were originally used for charity displays suddenly lit up. Rafe Drigg's face appears on the screen. He looks pale and nervous and is sitting in an interrogation room. It was all Mara's idea, right from the start. His voice echoed in the shocked ballroom. She said her husband had a large life insurance policy, and that if he had an accident in the workshop, no one would suspect a thing. We've been planning this for months. And then that daughter complicates things. She overheard our conversation, Mara in the woods that day, and she pushed her down the slope. We thought she was dead, but she survived and Mara decided it would be best to end it in the hospital. Makes it look like the injury was caused by too much. Mara rushes for the nearest exit, but the officers move quickly to block her path. It's a trap, she shouted, frantically looking around for support, for those who had stood by her in court. But the faces that met hers were now tinged with shock and fear, as if her crimes were contagious, and they stepped back. We have all the evidence, Mara, Clay said calmly. The life insurance policies, the Mexican real estate, the expunged hospital records, and Rafe's full confession, including how you tampered with the evidence and bribing the judge. Mara's composure completely collapsed. Her face contorted with rage at Clay. You think you've won? You're nothing without me. Nothing. I made you. I gave you a life beyond that wretched machine shop. I gave you a daughter. And then you tried to take her away. Clay replied, his voice steady. Why? For money? For him? For freedom? Mara spat. Freedom from the complacency of your town. You definitely don't want to become more successful. Do you know what it's like to be married to someone with no ambition or vision? Detective Vance steps forward, handcuffs in hand. Mrs. Merrick, you have the right to remain silent. I don't need silence, Mara hissed, her disguise now completely shattered. Rafe won't confess easily. What did you do to him, Clay? What did you promise him? He deserves it, Clay replied. And that's exactly what you're going to get. The officers take Mara away, her curses and accusations echoing off the walls of the ballroom. Clay felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only an empty relief that it was finally over. Shira placed a bottle of fresh wildflowers on the nightstand and adjusted it so that when Lark opened her eyes, they would be the first thing she would see if she woke up. This private room in Pinewood has become Clay's second home for the past few weeks. He added a few personal items: Lark's favorite books, photographs, a small string of colored lights that brought a warm glow to the sterile space. "She's looking much better today," Shira said as she checked the monitors, which had become as familiar to Clay as his own reflection. Clay nodded, his eyes not leaving his daughter's face. Doctors are cautiously optimistic. Brain activity continues to increase. She responds to stimuli. One light grip of the hand, one change of light. These small victories, Clay collects them like precious stones. "I should go," Shira said reluctantly. "I'm on duty in 30 minutes. Clay looked up and grabbed her hand as she turned to leave. "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done it without you." Shira's smile was so warm, reaching her eyes, that Clay had almost forgotten that smiles could be like that. She's a fighter, like her dad. After Shira leaves, Clay sits down in the chair next to Lark's bed. He opened the book he was reading to her, a fantasy novel about a brave little girl who saves her kingdom. He's not sure if Lark can hear him, but the doctor encourages normal interactions, and Clay finds solace in the ritual. The forest is getting darker and darker, and Eliza is deeper into it. He read, his voice steady and calm, but she is not afraid. She now knows the truth, and the truth is a light that no darkness can extinguish. A tiny movement caught his attention. Lark's fingers, curled up on the blanket, moved gently. Clay stopped reading and held his breath. Maybe it's nothing. Muscle spasms occur occasionally. The doctor warned him not to overinterpret the meaningless reflexes. But then, it happened again. A more deliberate action. Her index finger extended, then curled back. "Lark." Clay put the book down and moved closer. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. The bedside monitor showed an increased heart rate. "That's it," Clay encouraged, hoping to make his voice quiver. "Take your time. I'm here." Slowly, painfully slowly, Lark's eyes opened, a little out of focus at first, even as the dim light in the room made her blink. Then her eyes landed on Clay, and the confusion faded to recognition. "Dad." The word was barely audible, her voice hoarse from not having used it in so long. Clay held her hand as tears welled up in his eyes. "I'm here, kid. You're safe now." Lark's eyes widened as the memory returned. "Mom," she whispered, fear clouding her face. "I know." Clay soothed. "I know it all. She can't hurt you anymore. She'll be in jail for a long, long time." Relief swept over Lark's face, followed by exhaustion. Her eyelids grew heavy. "Rest," Clay told her. "I'll be here when you wake up." She nodded softly and then fell back asleep, her hand still clasped in his. Clay leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed by unspeakable emotions. Relief, joy, grief over loss, hope for the future. He picked up his cell phone with a trembling hand and dialed Shira's number. "She woke up," he said when he got through. "Just for a minute, but she recognized me." She spoke. Shira's joy came through the phone. "I'll tell the doctors." "Oh, Clay, great." After hanging up, Clay returned to his vigil, watching the gentle rise and fall of Lark's chest. For the first time in months, that oppressive feeling in his chest eased slightly. Since the discovery of Lark's note, the hard shell of anger and determination that encased his heart began to crack, making room for something else. Not forgiveness, not by any means, but maybe someday it will be healing. The visiting room at the women's correctional facility is cold and uninteresting. Clay sat at a metal table fixed to the floor and waited. He hesitated for weeks, unsure if the visit was necessary, unsure if he could face Mara without the protective shell of anger that had sustained him for so long. But Lark's therapist suggested that ending the relationship might help them both. So here he was, hands clasped on the table, looking at the heavy door that would soon let in the woman he had once loved so much that he couldn't reason with her. As Mara was escorted in by the guards, Clay was surprised at how thin she looked in her monotonous prison uniform. Her hair was slicked back harshly and her face was free of makeup. Gone was the well-groomed sophistication she'd always maintained, leaving only a woman Clay barely recognized. She sat across from him, her eyes tired. "I didn't think you'd come." "I didn't want to come, either," Clay admitted. There was a moment of silence between them, heavy with the weight of everything they had ever had, everything they had lost. "How is she?" Mara finally asked. "Recovering well," Clay replied, offering no details. "The doctor said she'll walk again with time." Mara nodded, her expression inscrutable. What about you? Clay, how are you doing? The question caught him off guard. There was something in her tone, a hint of the woman he had married, the woman he had believed in. Why are you doing this? Instead of answering, he asked, just for the money? Or for him? Mara looked at her hands, nails now short and unpolished. Does it matter now? It's important to me. She sighed, and the voice seemed to come from somewhere deep and hollow. Not one thing. Money, yes. Rafe, too, in a way. But mostly. She looked up and met his eyes directly. I'm choking, Clay. In that house, in that town, in that life. I want more. I deserve more. What about Lark? What does she deserve? Mara shuddered slightly. I never meant to hurt her that badly. She shouldn't have been there that day. She shouldn't have heard. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.